Okay, listener name, get this. A hidden system in all our conversations, older than language itself. You really sent us down a rabbit hole this time.
Intriguing, isn't it?
Totally. So this interaction engine, it's how we understand each other, even before words get involved, right?
You've got it. Think gestures, tone, all those nonverbal cues we pick up on without realizing it.
Like a secret language everyone speaks. All right, let's crack open this human-spoken interaction as a complex adaptive system and see what makes it tick.
Well, what's fascinating is this interaction engine is as much a part of us as our own biology.
Okay, go.
It's a complex adaptive system. Think of it like the human brain, always changing, yet following certain patterns.
So you're saying there are actual rules to how we communicate, just like our brains have structures?
Precisely. And the best part is, we're often not even consciously aware of them. It's like we're all playing this intricate game without ever reading the rule book.
That's wild. Give me an example. How does this interaction engine actually play out in a real conversation?
Imagine you're traveling in a foreign country, no clue about the local language.
Oh, been there, done that. Lots of frantic hand gestures, haha.
Exactly. And somehow you still manage to order food, find your way around. That's the interaction engine kicking in.
So it's like a universal language we all speak, even without realizing it.
Precisely. It's how we signal, I'm listening, I understand, even, hold on, I think there's been a misunderstanding, all without relying solely on words.
That's amazing. I never realized how much we rely on this hidden system. It's like we've been speaking a secret language our entire lives.
Mm.
But the book goes deeper, right? This interaction engine isn't just a fixed set of rules. It's dynamic, always changing.
Absolutely. It's constantly adapting and evolving based on who's using it and the situation. Just think about how different communication was a few decades ago. Before the internet, texting, emojis, all that, the interaction engine has had to keep up.
Wow. This is making me completely rethink how I talk to people. It's not just words going back and forth. It's like we're dancing, building on each other's moves without even realizing it.
Exactly. And Seedhouse and Siegel break it all down into these fascinating concepts. Turn-taking, sequence organization, repair, they really get into the nuts and bolts of how this engine operates.
Okay, now those sound a bit intimidating, like something I'd need a linguistics degree to understand.
Not at all. They're just fancy terms for things we do every day without thinking. Let's start with turn-taking, for example.
All right, turn taking. Seems straightforward enough, right?
It seems that way, but there's actually a lot more to it than you might think. It's how we know when it's our turn to speak, how we signal we're done with our thought, even how an interruption can completely change where a conversation is headed.
Wait, so there are traffic signals in our conversations we're not even aware of.
You could say that. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is. What about those other terms you mentioned? Sequence organization and repair. Those sound pretty technical.
Well, they might sound complicated, but they're really quite intuitive. Take sequence organization, for instance. Think about how weird it would be to apologize before explaining what you did wrong, right?
That would be totally backwards.
Exactly. Sequence organization is just a fancy way of saying there's a natural order to things in a conversation. It's the underlying logic that helps us make sense of the back and forth.
Makes sense. And repair. Is that when the conversation breaks down completely?
Not quite. Repair is more about those little hiccups we all experience when we realize we haven't quite understood each other.
Like when you accidentally say the wrong thing and have to backtrack?
Exactly. Or when you simply need someone to clarify what they mean. Think of it like hitting the reset button in a conversation. Those, wait, what? Or could you repeat that?
Yeah.
Moments. Pure repair. In action. It's the interaction engine's way of getting us back on the same page.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. But it's so true. This is really making me appreciate how complex even the simplest conversation really is.
It is remarkable, isn't it? And the thing is, we do it all so effortlessly without even realizing it. We're all conversational masters.
Right. It's like we're all fluent in this hidden language of interaction
Yeah.
without even knowing it.
Precisely. And that's something that Seedhouse and Siegel really emphasize. This isn't just some abstract academic theory. Understanding this hidden language can have real benefits in our everyday lives and how we connect with others.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. How does understanding all this actually help us in the real world? Give me an example.
Well, let's say you're in a big meeting trying to get your point across, but people keep cutting you off.
Ugh, the worst. I've definitely been there. So how does knowing about this interaction engine help in that situation?
Being aware of those subtle turn-taking cues can be a game changer.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
For example, instead of getting frustrated when someone jumps in, you can start to anticipate it.
Anticipate it. You mean like predict when someone is about to interrupt?
In a way, yes. By paying attention to their tone, their body language, you can start to pick up on those cues that signal someone's about to speak. Then you can either find ways to politely hold the floor or create space for them to jump in at the appropriate time.
Wow, it's like you'd have X-ray vision into people's conversational intentions. You'd always be one step ahead.
In a sense, yes. By being more attuned to these cues, you can avoid those conversational collisions and navigate those situations much more effectively.
I love it. So this isn't just about understanding communication. It's about leveling up our communication skills.
Precisely.
This could be huge for everything, job interviews, dates, even just surviving family dinners.
Absolutely. The applications are endless.
Okay, I'm sold. But I'm still stuck on this whole interaction engine is older than language thing.
Yeah.
How in the world do they even figure that out? It's not like we have recordings of cavemen chatting around a fire.
Haha, true. While we may not have those caveman recordings, we can look at our primate relatives for clues.
Ah, you mean like chimpanzees and gorillas?
Exactly. Even without complex language like ours, they still need ways to communicate, to coordinate their activities, to raise their young. The interaction engine, with its focus on nonverbal cues and turn-taking, likely provided the foundation for all of that.
So it's like language came later, building on this already existing system.
Precisely, and because it predates language, it helps explain why the system is so universal. It transcends cultural and language barriers. It's something we all share. It's part of what makes us human.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. I'm completely hooked. So we've got this ancient universal system that's constantly evolving. What else did Seedhouse and Siegel have to say about how this interaction engine actually works?
Well, that's a great question, and it leads perfectly into the next part of our deep dive. You see, because the interaction engine is a system, it's constantly responding to the environment around it.
Okay, that makes sense. So how has this interaction engine changed over time?
Think about it. How much have our communication styles changed just in the last few decades with the rise of the internet, text messaging, social media? It's been a period of massive change.
You're right. It's like our digital lives have created a whole new set of rules for how we talk to each other.
Exactly. And the interaction engine has had to adapt right along with them. Think about how people used to write letters.
Oh, right. Like with actual pen and paper.
Exactly. The formality, the anticipation of a reply that might take days, even weeks.
Snail mail?
Exactly. That slower pace, it shaped how they interacted. The rhythm of their communication was totally different.
It's wild how much faster everything is now.
Isn't it? We're all about instant responses, emojis, fitting everything into a tweet.
And that's changed how we talk, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've established this interaction engine is old, it's everywhere, always evolving.
But why should we care? What's the practical use of knowing all this?
That's the million-dollar question. Seedhouse and Siegel argue that understanding this engine can make us better communicators.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like knowing the rules of the road makes you a better driver, even if you don't think about them every second.
Precisely.
But how do you become more aware of something so subconscious?
They suggest something called conversation analysis.
Conversation analysis. Is that like secretly recording your friends or something?
No, nothing quite so sneaky. It's more about paying close attention to the details we often miss.
The details. Like what?
Well, it can involve actually transcribing conversations, really dissecting the pauses, the overlaps, those subtle changes in tone.
Like watching a movie with the director's commentary.
Exactly. You start to notice all those little choices that impact how the conversation flows.
So, by studying these transcripts, what kind of insights do we get? What are we looking for?
Patterns, the almost musicality of how we interact.
Musicality.
You start to see how a well-placed pause can create suspense, how overlapping speech can be excitement or disagreement.
Oh, interesting.
We convey so much through tone of voice alone, even contradicting the words themselves sometimes.
It's like becoming fluent in a whole new language, the language of interaction itself.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm on board with conversation analysis, but this still feels a bit theoretical. Can you give me a real-world example? How does this actually help me?
Let's say you're in a big meeting trying to make your point, but you keep getting talked over.
Ugh, tell me about it. Been there. Way too often.
Right. So instead of just feeling frustrated, you can use this knowledge.
Okay, how?
Start to notice those cues that someone is about to jump in. It might be a change in their posture, their breathing, a certain look in their eyes.
So you can tell they're about to interrupt before they do.
Exactly. Then you can decide how to react. Politely hold the floor, maybe. Or create space for them to speak.
So it's about being more strategic, more in control of the conversation.
Precisely. By being more attuned to these cues, we can navigate those situations more effectively.
Okay, this is actually super helpful. This isn't just theory, it's like a superpower.
I like to think so.
This could help with everything. Job interviews, first dates,
Mhm.
even just talking to your family. What other examples do Seedhouse and Siegel give?
They highlight its importance in cross-cultural communication. Even when people don't speak the same language, they can still connect.
Oh, right. I mentioned those lost in translation moments earlier. Even when you don't understand the words, you can still get a sense of what someone's trying to say. But how do we use this shared system effectively when cultures are so different?
That's a great question. It's important to remember that while the basic mechanisms of this interaction engine are universal, the specific ways they're expressed can vary.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah,
Like, what might seem friendly in one culture could be totally rude somewhere else.
exactly. A gesture, a tone of voice, what might be seen as assertive in one context could be aggressive in another.
So it's not enough to just know the rules, you have to know the local customs, too.
Precisely. It's about being observant, adapting your style, being open to learning from the people around you.
So much of communication is about being sensitive to those differences.
Absolutely. It's about being adaptable and respectful, especially when interacting with people from different backgrounds.
This is so insightful. It's making me rethink all my past conversations.
Yeah.
But here's a thought. If this interaction engine is so fundamental, why haven't we heard of it before? It seems like something everyone should know about.
It's funny, right? It's like we've been driving this complex machine our whole lives without ever really looking under the hood.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So why IS that? Why is this so hidden?
Well, Seedhouse and Siegel suggest it's because it works so well that we tend to overlook it. We learn it so early, it becomes almost invisible.
We don't even realize we're doing it. Like, we don't think about breathing, we just DO it.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean we can't improve.
Oh, you're saying we can get better at this even if it's natural.
Think about athletes. They might have natural talent, but they still train to refine their skills.
So even with something as basic as conversation, practice makes perfect.
Exactly. By understanding how this engine works, we can all become more skillful communicators.
Like learning an instrument. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Precisely.
So where do we begin? What are some practical takeaways our listeners can start using today?
Start with listening. Really listening.
Okay, most people think they're good listeners, but
It's not just about hearing the words, it's about paying attention to the tone, the pauses, the body language. Those subtle cues tell you what's really being said.
it's like we talked about before, turning up the volume on those subtle signals.
And as you become more aware of these cues in others, you'll start to notice them in yourself.
Oh, you mean like catching myself interrupting
Yeah.
or realizing my tone is off?
Exactly. It's about holding a mirror up to your own communication style.
And once you see those blind spots, you can start to correct them.
Precisely. And that's when the magic happens. Conversations flow smoother, there are fewer misunderstandings, you connect on a deeper level.
This has been eye-opening. We started with this simple idea, a hidden system, and ended up uncovering this whole new way to understand how we connect as humans.
It really makes you appreciate the complexity of something we often take for granted, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Listener name. I don't know about you, but I'm never going to listen to a conversation the same way again.
Me neither. It's like a whole new world has opened up.
And the best part, we all have the potential to be better communicators. We just need to tap into this amazing ancient system.
It's about bridging divides, building stronger relationships, creating a more compassionate world.
And who wouldn't want that? This interaction engine might just be the key. Well, listener name, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Be sure to check back in next time when we unpack yet another fascinating find. Until then, happy communicating.